teach a class here called Communication and Calling. And on the first day, I ask students to consider this. Imagine for a moment that you were given 1 year where all of your expenses are paid for, right? Everything is paid for 1 year, and you get to have any kind of internship you have ever dreamed of. What would that dream internship be? Imagine for a moment that dream. You know, professors have a dream too, and if you were to ask a lot of them, they would probably say their dream is to do research. Now, I realize that what you might have just heard me say is that my dream is to do homework all the time, and that's not at all what I'm talking about. Instead, think about research like the opportunity to fully immerse yourself into something you care deeply about. To fully immerse yourself into something you care deeply about. And a few years ago, I got a chance to be a research fellow, which basically meant that I got to binge watch research for an entire semester. I just got to be there in these dark cherry wood offices, eating tasty food and sitting around talking with other smart people. I felt like I was part of the Inklings with C.S. Lewis. It was amazing. And I would walk out of these places and my mind and my heart was just sparking because I got to do this amazing thing. I got to chew and eat on research. What was that research, you might be asking? Well, it was humility. And during this time of studying humility, I realized a couple things. First thing I realized, we approach humility very differently. Some smart people in the room had different ideas of what humility was all about. And I don't know, have you had that experience recently where you go into a situation and you think we all have the same understanding of something? Like we just assume this one idea, we have the same idea of it, and all of a sudden you realize not so much. Maybe it's that you thought you had the same idea of what it meant to be a clean roommate or to be on time to class. Or maybe you had the same idea, or you thought you did, of what it meant to be just friends, or it's complicated, right? So this idea of humility being universally understood quickly sort of dissolved, and I realized we approach it very differently, and this is especially significant. Why? Why is this significant? For us as Christians, it's significant because walking in humility helps us walk with God. In Micah 6:8, we are literally told that humility is something that God requires of us when he invites us to walk with him. Humility is how we are to enter the process of walking with God. Now, the problem is, I think that we often confuse humility with several things. I think we can confuse humility with this idea of being insecure or a lack of confidence, that we're actually supposed to ignore the things that we're good at, ignore the passions that God gave us. I think we confuse it with that. I think we confuse it with a kind of passivity where we're just supposed to always accept what's given to us without having any sense of mindfulness about it. Or even we confuse it with a lack of boundaries, that we're supposed to serve and serve and serve and serve and sacrifice until we have reached the breaking point and we don't know who we are anymore. That is not humility, my friends. And so today, in our time together, I'm hoping that you will journey with me and we can talk more deeply about what it means, the core of humility, what God's word says about it, and something I would like to offer you today as you leave here. So here's the big idea. The key to humility is gratitude. Not a complacent, ambiguous, like, I'm grateful, but something intentional. I'm grateful to someone. I'm grateful to the giver of all good things. When we do this, humility actually becomes a kind of superpower. And when we approach that well, it can significantly change our lives for the better. So think back to the scripture that was recently read. Consider Romans 12. Consider what it says about humility. Don't think of yourselves more highly than you ought, but think of yourselves with sober judgment. There's one version that actually says here, be honest in your evaluation of yourself. Sober judgment, not foolishness, not naivety, actual good judgment. Think of yourself with good judgment, knowing that the gifts that God has given you come from him, and they are meant to edify him and the body. Did you hear that? That's amazing. Humility is about being honest with ourselves about ourselves. Humility is about resting on the foundation of trust in God, and it includes an awareness of the gifts that He has actually given you. Of the gifts that He has given you. How can this be done? How can we actually be aware of our strengths and our weaknesses, but not let those awarenesses overcome us? This past year, I had the great honor of publishing about research related to humility and burnout. I published with these phenomenal people that I just admire and see as heroes, and they wanted to actually work with me, which was just pretty incredible. Brian Dick, Donnie Davis, and Ryan Duffy, and we approach humility this way. Humility, we assert, is a relational virtue, which means that it's always going to be more than just about us. It involves an accurate view of the self. Again, accurate view of the self. Not too lofty, but also not too self-deprecating. And it always, of course, involves a focus on the betterment of others. And this is where I would like to invite you to linger with me for a moment. I would like to suggest that healthy humility involves three different things. First, healthy humility involves knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. In communication studies, we call this communication competence. Healthy humility also involves a teachability, a willingness to continue to learn. And I realize that we're at a university and that might seem obvious, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And lastly, humility involves consistently seeking rest and reflection. Recognizing, but also acting on the strong belief that everyone needs refueling. So let's dive into that first point. Humility involves our strengths and our weaknesses. So when I first started working at Biola, I wasn't sure I wanted to stay. Now, I felt called to be here. I genuinely felt like God had asked me to be here, but I'm not from California, so I missed my family and my friends, and I wasn't sure that I fit into the California vibe. But 2 years into my time here, I actually won an award for teaching, and at the time, my chair, Dr. Todd Lewis, came and he gave me the news. So he tells me this news, and I immediately lower my head. I offer a few objections. I mention a few things that I've recently failed at as a way of cushioning myself from this exciting news. And he said to me with total kindness, "Don't do that. I see good in you. God gave you this gift. If you respond like that, you're not only insulting my judgment about you, you're also insulting the gifts that God gave you. Accept it with gratitude. Accept it with gratitude, even when you feel undeserving." It's weirdly hard to do that, though, right? When someone offers you something, it's almost like you don't want to hold it too much because that's scary, because you don't want to be prideful. And so immediately we just sort of throw it away sometimes. But the key here is to remember Romans 12. The skills are God-given. They weren't yours to begin with. So when someone compliments you or recognizes good in you, you take it and then you pass it on. You say, "Thank you." You don't drop it. You take it and then you pass it on. The way to recognize strengths is to immediately turn it into gratefulness to the strengths giver, because gratitude disrupts the temptation to pride. Gratitude acknowledges the giver, but more than that, gratitude focuses on the giver rather than the self. That's pretty amazing. Okay, so that's strengths, but what do we do about weaknesses? How can we have healthy humility about our weaknesses? During this past winter, I had one of the hardest seasons of my entire life. Have you had a season like that? Where it went from bad to worse to even worse? Maybe you are here right now and you are processing that kind of season. For me, I had multiple serious health scares in my family. We had incredibly terrifying car accidents, multiple, and just other things that are hard that I won't bring into our conversation today. But I remember driving one day, and I remember thinking, "Lord, I feel fragile. I feel fragile." And then I felt that Holy Spirit tap, and I had this image of the potter's hands soaked and caked with clay. And I heard in my heart, "It's okay that you're fragile. I'm the potter. You're the clay. If you get too brittle, I can soften you. If you break, I can rebuild you. I'm the potter. You're the clay." My friends, it is okay if you feel fragile. You are not alone. It is okay. Don't let that fragileness distract you because you can turn it over to Jesus. And I don't mean that in a try it like just give it to Jesus kind of way. I mean, give it and offer it to the Savior. Try saying this out loud. Jesus, I can't handle this. I need you. Come quickly. Say it even now if you need to. Jesus, I can't handle this. I need you. Come quickly. You do not have to carry weakness on your own, and weakness does not need to be shameful. It does not need to be shameful. Sometimes knowing your strengths and your weaknesses also means being aware that your weaknesses do not make God shakeable. He is unshakable, even in the moments where you feel weak. And I hesitate saying this, but here's what I want you to know. Being consumed with your own weakness is just as damaging as being consumed with your strength. It is the same coin, the other side of pride, because it's a focus on yourself, not God. So honestly being aware of your weaknesses does not erase your strengths. You can be aware of your weaknesses and your strengths at the same time, and when you are aware of your weaknesses, it invites the holy strength in. Consider this for just a moment. What is one area where you feel weak right now? What's one area? You don't need to stay in that place alone. Invite God into that weakness right now. Try saying, Father, I need your help. Father, I need your help. Ask the Lord to fill the gaps for you, and you can trust that He will. So humility is about thinking less of yourself in the sense that you're not distracted with yourself versus thinking poorly of yourself. Meaning thinking badly of yourself. Why does this matter? Because not being clear about what you're good at is a lot like being given a present and never opening it. You're just given this amazing gift and you don't actually open it to see what's inside. And not being clear on where you need to grow, what weaknesses you have, or even being overly focused on yourself as if you feel like everyone's watching you all the time and seeing all of your mistakes, being insecure is really just the other side, right? It's the other side of the same coin. It's a focus on the self. Healthy humility involves knowing what you're good at, but then giving it immediately over in gratitude. Healthy humility also involves knowing where you need to grow and seeking God's strength rather than swimming in shame about it. Okay, are you ready for the second point? Let's go there together. So humility involves knowing your strengths and weaknesses, but it also involves being teachable, having a willingness to learn. And I realize we are here at a university and, the whole point here is to learn, right? But how we approach learning matters a great deal. How we approach learning matters a great deal. I was visiting my folks a little while ago, and they're so wonderful. They keep a lot of my stuff. I'm an only child, so that might be part of the reason. But they keep a lot of my stuff. And they had a box of books and papers from my college time. And they said, while we love all of these things, we probably don't need them anymore. So would you mind sorting through them and throwing a few things away? And I said, sure. So I'm sorting through these boxes, and I come across some hard copy papers of things that I've written in college. And I'm looking over them, feeling really sentimental and chuckling at how silly some of the things I wrote were. And then I come across some comments by professors. And some were just really mean and kind of unhelpful. And then I came across other papers with the same sort of errors. And there were comments by professors that were clear and gave correction, but with kindness. It's a lot easier to be teachable when you feel seen and heard, isn't it? It's a lot easier to be teachable when you actually enjoy yourself. It's a lot harder to be teachable when you're not enjoying yourself. But healthy humility involves being teachable even when it's hard. Healthy humility involves being teachable even when it's hard. This is actually called growth mindset. I want us to stay here for a second. Let's talk about this. Growth mindset and fixed mindset. Some of you might have heard these terms before. The research came from Carol Dweck, who's a professor at Stanford University, and here the view of failure is key. Fixed mindset is this belief that you have that we all have certain skills. Those are your skills, and you can use them, but when you fail, it is devastating. Growth mindset is we have some skills, but we can also develop them and even develop others that aren't naturally ours. And when you fail, that doesn't feel good, but you're going to learn from it and you're going to keep going. Aside from people that I love getting hurt, my greatest fear in the world is failure. It paralyzes me. I naturally gravitate towards the fixed mindset. That's just who I am. I have had to teach myself to go towards the growth mindset. And luckily, I grew up in a home where my parents would always ask me, well, what did you learn from that experience? What did you learn from that experience? And so that was something that was taught to me. Consider Psalm 25, which says, he guides the humble in what is right. Humility is a teaching process. Humility is a teaching process, and it says guides, meaning we're going somewhere. In that same passage right beforehand, talks about how God instructs the sinners in his ways. He instructs sinners in his ways. God is humble and loving enough to want to instruct us while we were still sinners. Not only does the Lord offer to guide the humble, he offers to walk with us, to teach us. He offers you his way of learning. And isn't that wonderful? Check out Matthew 11:28. Some of us have heard this verse a lot, but I want us to walk through it recognizing the role of humility. So will you do that with me? Let's read it again. Come to me, all who you are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus extends an offer to us to learn from him because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. He invites us to learn from him, and he tells us that his heart is humble. He is showing us the way to be teachable. What's one primary way that we can demonstrate authentic teachableness? Not being defensive. It's a lot easier said than done, right? When you're feeling like not safe in a situation and not seen and heard and it just gets under your skin, that immediate response is there. But one way to be teachable is to settle that down a little bit. Humility involves a willingness to learn and grow, and this can be messy, and it certainly requires perseverance. The thing about perseverance is we can all start out with perseverance. It's what happens when we get tired where perseverance really matters. Perseverance is enacted when we want to stop, when we are weary, but we know that great good is coming if we continue. James 1 says, let perseverance finish its work. Angela Duckworth wrote a book called Grit. It's pretty fabulous if you haven't read it already. And she shares a story about an Olympic swimmer. And when he was younger, if you are an athlete or have done certain things that require you to practice every single day, you know that sometimes that gets exhausting. And so this Olympic swimmer, when he was younger, was missing out on all sorts of fun, and he was like having a rough time. And one day he told his dad, I don't want to do this anymore. And his dad said, okay, you can quit, but don't quit on a bad day. Quit on a day where you feel clear-minded, where your heart is full. Don't quit on a bad day. Some of you here are having a bad day. We have those. But don't quit today. Don't quit on a bad day. Is there an area in your life right now that you might benefit from being a little bit more teachable? Where you are feeling weary by the process, but if you were just a little bit more open, you might benefit from this? My friend, let the shepherd in. Let him teach you. You don't have to learn alone. That's the point of actually being a mature adult, is you know you don't have to do it alone. There's nothing to prove by doing it alone. We learn and grow in community. Invite the Lord to be your teacher. Learning from the Lord brings you rest for your soul. And that leads us to our third point. So we've talked about how humility involves being aware of your strengths and your weaknesses, and how it involves a teachableness, growth mindset. But let's go to this last point. Walking with God humbly involves knowing how to rest and reflect. Here's what I mean. Healthy humility recognizes that to function at our best, oh my gosh, we need some rest. To function at our best, we all need a little rest. We are not the God of our universe, and the world will not fall apart if we walk away for just a little bit. Taking time to Sabbath means surrendering control to God. It means trusting the author of time by tithing your time to him. Check this out. In Hebrews 4, it says this. There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their work, just as God did. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest. Not if it's easy, not if it's clean and tidy, Lean into it, even if it's messy, even if you fail at it, lean into it. Earlier, I shared with you that this past winter was one of the hardest I've ever had, and certainly that made Sabbathing really hard. And I found myself almost every week kind of crawling on my hands and knees to the Sabbath. And my husband and I chose to Sabbath on Saturdays together. When I was single, it was a little bit easier because I could just do whatever I wanted to sort of do. And now that I get to do it with someone else, it's a little messier and it's always better. It's not easy for either of us, but it's always worth it. Inevitably, every time Sabbath came, my mind would be flooded with work and worry and stress, and just even taking a day to realize how much I worry was sort of illuminating as well. But Sabbath released me from the control and the seductive lure of workaholism. Sabbath will release you too. It helped me see that in the midst of all these hard things that were going on, it helped me. I took time to reflect. I also saw God's faithfulness. Ruth Haley Barton, spiritual director and co-founder of Transforming Center, a ministry that actually helps pastors and Christian leaders, she says this: rhythms are not established by accident. Rhythms are not established by accident. What kind of rhythms do you currently have in your life that help you rest? What kind of rhythms do you currently have in your life that help you rest? For my family, part of Sabbath involves Sabbath pancakes and a meditative prayer. Somehow those seem to go together. And so we might add other things in our day. We might go for a run along the beach or a hike in the mountains or do something really fun. But regardless of what we do, we have our pancakes and our meditative prayer. And we also take a pause on social media for the day, just for one day, which I also realize reveals my addiction because that's really hard for me. When I was thinking a little bit more about how to lean into Sabbath and be more intentional in my prayer time, one of my mentors suggested including the prayer of examine. And we don't have time to linger here in this part, but I want to just reveal to you the steps, and you can look it up as well. You can take this and do it in 5 minutes and do it really quick, or you can actually stretch it out and have it be a 30-minute process of reflection that will inevitably lead you to gratitude. Here are the steps. First, you ask God to bless your understanding. You say, Lord, help me make sense of what's going on. And then you review the day in thankfulness. Since we do this in the morning, it's reviewing the day before. And then we notice the feelings that surface. Don't rush through that. And then we choose one feeling and we pray from it. And then we look toward tomorrow and conclude in the Lord's Prayer. It sounds simple, but every time, no matter how hard my week is, I see where God has been faithful. I see where he has saved me, and I would not have seen it had I not paused to reflect. Again, rhythms are not established by accident. So what kind of new rhythm would you want to add to your time to help you rest? It can be small but steady. So if we take time to reflect rather than skim social media, if we take time to reflect rather than binge watching our favorite TV show, if we take time to reflect rather than keeping ourselves busy at all times of the day, we cultivate a heart of humility. We cultivate a heart of humility. We can examine where our strengths are and take time to thank God. We can examine where our weaknesses are and invite the Lord in. We can examine where we have felt like a failure and choose to shake it off and step up again and keep learning, or keep on swimming, as Dory would say from Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming, right? Sabbath is the practice of the humble. And it's not easy to do, and it's often messy, and honestly, maybe half the time we fail at it, my husband and I, but then we just learn from it and try again the next time. And there's always a reason to postpone it. It's always uncomfortable. It is always worth it. And 2 helpful tips. First tip, be sure that you try to work extra hard the day beforehand and the day after. If you do that, it'll be more satisfying. Second tip, figure out what's restful for you. Because what's restful for the person next to you, or your roommate, or your friend, or your boyfriend, or your girlfriend, or your significant other, whatever it may not be restful for you. For me, when I think of rest, I think of nature and slowing down. A cozy blanket, a cup of coffee that you just kind of hold like a tiny hug. For me, that's rest. For my husband, rest is doing something adventurous and fun and something you wouldn't normally do that kind of gives you a new perspective on life. And so we had to kind of talk about how do we either alternate it or combine it so that we can honor each other's way of rest. How can you talk about that with someone that you spend time with? How might you support each other in the way that you rest? How do we pursue this whole thing of humility? Remember, the key to humility is gratitude. Always gratitude. Not just I'm grateful, but I'm grateful to the giver. It's mindful and it's intentional gratefulness. And more specifically, humility is about recognizing your strengths and weaknesses. So let's pause here for a second. Consider for a moment, what are you good at? Thank the Lord. Where are you feeling weak? Invite him in. Humility also involves being teachable, a willingness to learn. So what are you facing right now that if you let yourself be a little more teachable, you might benefit from something? Was there a situation where you've been a little defensive, or you just are so consumed with feeling like a failure you can't get out of it? Invite the Lord to teach you. Now, I want to be clear. Sometimes walking away from something is the right thing to do because it's not healthy or it's harmful, and that's a whole other conversation. But I want to be clear, you are not required to stick to something just because you said you would. If it's harmful, you need to talk about that and think about something else. But if you know deep down it's worthwhile and you're just tired, let perseverance finish its work. You are not a failure just because you've messed up. You are a child of God. You are a child of God, and he's invited you to learn from him. And lastly, humility involves consistently taking time to rest and reflect. The very best thing you could do is to help in your cultivating of humility is to rest and reflect. We lose perspective when we're weary. We lose perspective of ourselves and other people. We start telling ourselves false narratives and believing life through that false narrative when we're tired. Pursue Sabbath like you'd pursue the love of your life, because it is an expression of love to the one who gives you life. It is not only tithing your time to the author of time, it is practicing and releasing control to the one who is able and capable. It is the willingness to feel awkward and messy, because resting is not a normal practice, and we just feel awkward and messy. We naturally go to our phone when we're waiting in line because it just feels awkward to be there by ourselves. What if you did something different today or this week? Because he has shown us what is good. What the Lord requires of us is to act justly, to love mercy or kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. The Lord encourages it. He requires it. And in order to walk with him, we need to pursue humility. We get to pursue humility, but not on our own. Let's walk with God today.
Discover who you're called to be at Biola University, a leading Christ-centered university in Los Angeles, with programs on campus and online. Subscribe for more of our videos and learn more at biola.edu.